Hey, what's up? It's Kevin Rogers. Welcome to Copy Chief Radio, brought to you by copychief.com. See how that works? Let's get into it. Hey, welcome back to Copy Chief Radio. It's Kev here. Excited, man. My friend Ryan Levesque, probably our third or fourth interview together. Always one of the most popular episodes because Ryan is so many things. A cat that I learn from all the time. I would say Ryan is one of the few people in my 15-year career here in marketing and copywriting that has created some of the biggest shifts by very generously sharing, his big shifts, the things he's learned. And Ryan has an amazing ability to take big lessons and make them tangible, things that everybody can use. I'm sure you know that he sort of upended the whole marketing world back in 2016, around that era, 15, 16, 17, with the Ask method, a way to really understand where your audience is, the pains they're having, and hear their words. Understand their words. I always talk about the dialogue. Like that is the most valuable thing you can have in marketing is a dialogue with your audience. And the thing that Ask did that I was such a big fan of was it helped you understand how your prospects were feeling while they were still in the struggle. So often we only get to talk to our customers and our buyers when they've solved the problem, which is great to have a success story. But if we really want to reach a wider audience and have an impact, we need to understand what they're going through before they solve the problem. So Ask Method was a revolution in how to communicate with your audience. Now, Ryan's latest book is called Choose. And I love the simple concept of this book, which is the single most important decision you need to make before starting your business. So we're going to talk to Ryan about all the ways that he's been able to shift people's worldviews of marketing and why this new book, what was it born from? What did he see business owners continuing to struggle with that led to this book? Ryan Levesque, brother, looking forward to it. Thanks for being here.
Kev, man, it is always awesome to be here. Super grateful for that introduction. And I'm excited to jam with you, man. Talk about the book, talk about, why the book, talk about learnings behind the scenes and all that good stuff. So I'm excited to dive right in, man.
Yeah, let's do it. And I got to tell you, I was a little bit, this kind of came out of nowhere for me, right? I know you're always working on something big, but I mean, Ask, what a huge undertaking. Then Bucket.io, right? The software that fuels Ask and other marketing methods, which is, again, just if I knew one person who had spent 5 years working on either one of those things, I would completely understand. And then out of nowhere, seemingly, here comes Choose. And it isn't like, hey, I pumped out this book. Let's see if people want it. I mean, you've got an entire marketing campaign behind this book as well. So I'd love to dive a little bit into just your thinking as a marketer. Let's just start with how Choose is sort of the next chapter, the evolution after Ask and Bucket.
Yeah, so what's interesting about it is, so you talked a lot about Ask, and Ask, by any measure I could have come up with, was much more, it was wildly successful, beyond my biggest imagination around what Ask was going to transform into. And when you write a book like that, when you sell hundreds of thousands of copies and it becomes it's in all these different languages and you do all this great stuff. It's what's great is you get a lot of letters from people who tell you that the book changed their life. But with greater exposure, you also get a lot of people who tell you, dude, I read your book and it didn't work. And it pained me getting those emails and those messages and messages to our customer service that people were following the methodology to the letter and they were failing. And it kind of led me down this rabbit hole that became a 3-year research project to understand why people were not having success with Ask. And all roads pointed to the same thing. It came down to this. It came down to making the single biggest mistake before starting your business, which is not making the mistake of what, but making the mistake of who. In other words, people were choosing bad markets. They're going into markets that had no chance of succeeding, even if they followed the methodology to the letter. And there's this metaphor that I use that I think is really helpful. And it was a visual that I think brought it to life for me. And it was like this. I saw people, wanting to start a business. It's like tossing your raft in a river, right? You toss your raft in a river, you're going to go on this river journey. And your expectation is that you go in this river, it's going to take you to where you want to go. It's going to take you to your destination. Just like when you start a business, we all start businesses for different reasons. Usually it's a combination of freedom, financial freedom, the freedom to make your own hours, to live wherever you want, make an impact, leave a legacy, all of these things. We all have a different reason why. So you toss your boat in this river. And what I saw was that what was happening is this. You can buy the best raft money can buy. You can hire the most capable crew. You can buy the best equipment. You can bust your butt and row 18 hours a day in that raft. But if your raft is pointed in the wrong direction, or worse yet, you toss it in the wrong river, you're never going to get to where you want to go. And that's what I saw, is that people were putting they're working their butts off 18 hours a day, but they were putting their raft in bad rivers that were either too small, rivers that were pointed in the wrong direction, rivers that were too big, where they were getting swallowed up whole. And so what ended up happening, Kevin, is I was inspired by the work of Jim Collins. So Built to Last, Good to Great, Great by Choice. And if you're not familiar with Jim Collins' work, he studied the most iconic companies in history and looked at what is it that separated those that were successful from those that failed. Now, fortunately for us, over the past decade, I had gone into 23 different markets. So I'd gone into all these different niche markets. Some were more successful than others. In the past 10 years, I've worked with a number of clients and students. And so what we did is we studied every single one of those businesses. And we looked at what was it that separated the ones that were huge successes, the ones that were home runs, and the ones that either failed or never really took off. What we discovered is that there were 7 factors that separated the ones that were successful from the ones that failed. And we decided to write the book, Choose, to reveal what those 7 factors were. So in many ways, even though it's the follow-up to Ask, Choose is the prequel.
Right.
Choose is the book to read before you ask.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And it makes a lot of sense to me, having coached a lot of folks myself, particularly freelancers. There's a tendency to jump ahead, right? And, it's funny because with Ask, it was one of those things that I have this with one of my coaching programs, which is it's best for working freelancers, right? Now, I've discovered since that, wow, the much bigger market in people who want to be freelancers. Okay. Right. So, but I need to make a whole new product for them. Ask, certainly you could have no business and discover businesses through Ask. You have some great case studies, Jamal and others, I think, who sort of did that. But it's not that surprising to me that the best thing you could do for people you wanted to help was actually take a step back and write the prequel to Ask with this book.
It's like with what you teach, right? It's like, where do you start, right? It's like, you don't start at the beginning, like, how to tie your shoelaces and how to feed yourself, right? Okay. You got to decide where you're going to start in any journey, right? And where I started was understanding your audience in a deep way so you can understand their emotions, their needs, their wants, their desires, how to put people into different buckets so you can customize your messaging instead of selling in a one-size-fits-all way. And what I realized is that I was really teaching algebra where there's some people who needed arithmetic. Right. They needed to learn how to add and subtract before learning how to do long division. Right. And so that's what this book is all about. And we all start at different places in our journey. And so this book is really for a few different audiences. It's for anybody who's, if you're a freelancer and or maybe you're working a job right now, you're listening to this and you want to become a freelancer, but you're trying to figure out where to start, right? This book is for you. Maybe you are a freelancer. Maybe you do have a business right now, but it feels like you're pushing mud uphill. Like it feels like you're that guy in the boat or girl in the boat rowing 18 hours a day. And you're thinking, I should be going faster than this. I should have gone further than this by now. Like, what the hell's going on, right? If you feel like you're in that situation, you may need to rethink your audience. You may need to niche down. You may need to niche up. You may need to pivot ever so slightly to find that niche that falls into a few things I talk about, one of which is called the market size sweet spot, a market that is just the right size. Kevin, one of the coolest things that we discovered in this research, that I was blown away by this when we discovered this, is so we were looking at all these factors, trying to figure out what was it that separated these successful markets from the ones that failed, right?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't obvious on the surface, but one of the things we started studying was market size. So we looked at the keyword volume in every single one of our markets. What we found was incredible. We used the tool Google Trends. Now, Google Trends, if you're not familiar with it, it's a free tool. Anybody can use it. Google publishes the keyword results of any keyword you can think of. And so we looked at the keywords, what we called the bullseye keyword, for all of our different businesses. We did the same thing for all of our most successful and some failed clients, our students. And what we found, Kevin, is that every single one of the home runs, every single one of the most successful businesses all fit within a very narrow band. In fact, when we saw this, I remember sharing this with one of my colleagues, and she was like, we couldn't believe it. We're like, this is incredible. And every single one of the failures was either way outside it, above it, or way below it. And dude, it was one of these things that when we saw it, we're like, this is crazy. And our first thought was, this is like our secret, right? This is like our secret sauce. Can't share this with anybody. And then we took a step back and we said, well, what if we did something crazy? What if we did something absolutely crazy? And we published to the world exactly what those keywords are, so that anybody who's looking at your business or their business can compare your keyword against those benchmark reference keywords and see, are you in that same sweet spot? Or are you above, you below, or on the fringes? And we decided, Kevin, to reveal what those keywords are in the book. We decided to just put it all out there, reveal that critical ingredient in our secret sauce recipe, so that anybody can take their keyword, and we teach people exactly how to do this, and compare it against these reference keywords and see, where do you stack up? Is your market in that sweet spot? Is it outside? Is it below? And if so, do you need to niche up, niche down, or maybe make that pivot that we talked about a moment ago?
Yeah, I love that. That's brilliant, because here's the thing. We so often, when we're first thinking about starting a business, it's a lot of it is theory and emotion, and that's good. You need that fuel. Have a big idea, get excited about it, share it with other people, have them get excited, right? But I think whenever I see a failed pizzeria, right, I always picture this scenario where somebody went through that process. John, you got the best pizza I've ever had. You should open a pizzeria. You hear that enough times, you go, maybe I will, right? And somehow you get the money to do it, and you do it, but you don't advertise. You don't understand how to run a business. You just know how to make a great pizza, right? What this does, I think, is it brings okay, great. You have some passion, you have some ideas, they're resonating. Now let's get a little technical and more logical and say, how do you make an intelligent decision about how to enter that market? And is this the right market? And like you say in the book, who are you serving? And are there enough of those folks the way you're picturing them to fuel your business?
Yeah, and that's just one ingredient. So size, I don't want to mislead people to think that all you got to do is find a market that's the right size and then you're good to go. No, we discovered that there's something that we call the 5 market must-haves, 5 characteristics that every single market needs to have. We discovered that there's a competitive sweet spot. So we did the same sort of analysis that we did with market size with competition. Like one of the big mistakes I see people make all the time when it comes to deciding what market to go into is they do one of two things. One of two things happens. Either they talk to their wife or whoever, they say, I've got this great idea. Like, let's go online. Let's see if anybody's doing this. They go online and they say, crap. There's somebody already doing this.
Yeah, right.
We missed it. They close the book on the idea and then they just move on. Or they make another kind of mistake where they go online, they do the same research. Honey, nobody's doing this. We're going to get rich. Like, we're going to get so rich. And they're problems of a different kind. Mm-hmm. So that second one, we talked about nobody else is doing it. There's a phrase my mentor taught me, and I talk about this in the book, that is always stuck with me, and it's this. Pioneers get shot, but settlers get rich. And if you look at the most iconic companies of our age, of our time, you look at companies like Google or Facebook or Apple, none of them were the first to market. Google was not the first search engine. Right. Facebook was not the first social media platform. Apple was not the first to sell MP3 players or smartphones. Instead, what they did is they found a market that was proven and they built a better mousetrap. or they apply better messaging, better marketing, or a combination. And here's the thing, the writer downer, the thing that you're looking for is this. You're looking for a market where the competitors are succeeding in spite of themselves. You're looking for a market where you find someone who is making money doing the thing that they're doing, and you look at them and you say, gosh, if they only fix these 4 or 5 things, they'd be killing it.
Right.
Now, the big question everyone always asks me is, well, how do you figure out if someone's making money online? Here's the secret. If someone is consistently spending money on paid advertising, they're not doing it because they want to give Facebook or Google money. They're doing it because they're making money on that advertising. That's the secret, is you look at who is spending money on paid advertising in the space that you're going into. Now, it's not just enough to find evidence of paid advertising. Just like market size, we did the same research. And what we found, Kevin, is that there's a sweet spot. There's a sweet spot which represents the right amount of competition you're looking for based on the size of the market. You're looking for a market where there's some competition, where somebody else has pioneered this space, but not a market that there's too much competition where you're entering into a red ocean where you're going to be eaten alive. You want to be in that sweet spot. Now, if you can imagine an X and Y axis, right? Think back to math class, the horizontal line and the vertical line. What you're looking for is a market that you do the market size sweet spot on your X axis, competition on the Y axis. You're looking for a market that's right in the middle, that has the right amount of competition for the right size. And then it's like ding, 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 heat-seeking missile time. Now, that's what you're looking for.
That's great. Do you have an example? I'll put you on the spot here. An example of that. So with a market we can all imagine and see where that choice was made to hit that sweet spot.
So one of the markets that I talk about in the book is the beekeeping market. Now, beekeeping is an interesting market, right? And I tell the story of Sean Bissell, who applied this methodology that I teach in the book that we call the choose method for selecting his market. And he was looking at a whole bunch of different businesses, whole bunch of different markets. And one of the things that he found was that he was deciding between was the hummingbird market and the beekeeping market. Now, on the surface, they feel very similar, right? Hummingbirds, like having hummingbird feeders and, watching hummingbirds, beekeeping, keeping bees, like they both are small winged creatures that you enjoy, in your backyard, right? On the surface, they seem really like similar markets. But what you find when you look at the keyword volume relative to the amount of paid advertising online and competition, you'll find that they tell completely different stories. So one of those markets, the hummingbird market, is a red light market. The beekeeping market is a green light market. Now, it's not just about size and competition. I mentioned those 5 market must-haves, right? So there are 5 factors that I talk about in the book, and I'll talk about 1 or 2 of them here. So one of the factors that is incredibly important, and you'll appreciate this based on who I'm about to mention, is what we call finding a market that's filled with PWMs. PWMs, if you know what that stands for, is players with money. It's a phrase that I don't know where it originates. I first learned about it from the late, great Gary Halbert, one of the greatest direct response copywriters of all time. And players with money means that you're looking for a market that's not necessarily filled with billionaires or millionaires. You're looking for a market that's filled with people who spend a disproportionate amount of their income in that area of their life. So the classic example is the golf market, right? Golfers spend crazy amounts of money on golf equipment, clubs, green fees, instruction, golf vacations, golf trips, crazy amounts of money. You can look at evidence of PWMs based on a few different factors. So number 1, when you're doing your research in your market, you want to look, what are the startup costs to get involved in that thing? Whether it's a hobby, a vocation, maybe it's a career. So for example, to become a massage therapist, what's the investment required to get certified as a massage therapist versus becoming an orthodontist? What's the investment to get into a hobby market like chess versus owning a yacht?
Right.
So there are clues that can give you, not to say that all yacht owners are billionaires, but if you own a yacht, that's a substantial percentage of your income in that area of your life. Versus chess, you and I could go to Walmart, Kevin, and get a Milton Bradley game board for what, $20?
Yeah.
And we're set for life.
That's a nice one.
We never need another chessboard forever.
That'd be some ivory pieces or something. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. That's a great. Okay, good. Players with money, and those are clues you can look for. What are they spending on this part of their life? Hey, it's Kev here, and if you like this podcast, then you are going to love the Copy Chief app. Total, custom, easy to use, smooth phone app where you can listen to every podcast episode, plus get all the show notes, and dig it. You can listen right inside the app, even when your phone is in the locked position. Super cool. Plus, right there in the same app, you get access to all the great free Copy Chief content to help you write better, higher converting copy. Plus, members can access the private forum area right from the mobile app. It's available for you for free right now wherever you get your apps. Apple, Android, go get it. Download the Copy Chief app today because nobody writes alone. And the things you mentioned are sort of passion driven. I guess, the orthodontist compared to the massage therapist. So we're just looking for, if we're going to serve a need for them or a passion, we want to see on the scale that it's something that they're clearly investing in, even for it to exist in their lives.
Yeah, and that's just one of the factors, right? I'll give you another couple factors, right? So one of the things I talk about is the importance of going into what I describe as an evergreen market. Now, evergreen market is in contrast to a fad or trending market. So I learned this lesson the hard way. The first business that we started was in a random niche. You've heard me tell this story before. Anyone not familiar, it's the most random of niches, teaching people how to make jewelry using Scrabble tiles from the game and origami paper. Scrabble tile jewelry. Now you might be wondering, like, what? Like, how'd you get into that market? Like, is that even a thing? It was a market that was this huge fad around 2007, 2008. And my wife discovered it through the website Etsy.com, which had just started at that time. Etsy, if you're not familiar, is like eBay for handmade crafts, for everything from knitted items to pottery to jewelry to all sorts of handmade crafts. And this jewelry was selling like hotcakes. Like, it was crazy. It was everywhere. And so my wife and I were living in China at the time. She says to me, honey, we're in China. We have access to all this origami paper. We have access to inexpensive labor. We can set up a little factory in southern China, manufacture this jewelry, and we'll import it to the United States. Like, we're going to get rich, right? And I said, well, I don't want to start that kind of business. We're going to be tied to this factory. We want to be able to travel. We want to be able to, have more freedom. So I closed the book on the idea. A few weeks later, she comes back and she says, I want to go back to that Scrabble jewelry thing again. And she says, hear me out. There's this woman. She's not making the jewelry. She's teaching people how to make the jewelry. She's selling this PDF tutorial on Etsy, and take a look. Now, the cool thing about Etsy is that you can see someone's sales history. So you can see how many sales they're making every single day. So we just reverse engineered her income by going back to her sales history, today's sales history, yesterday, the day before. And what we found is that she was selling like 25 copies a day of this PDF that she was selling for like 20, 30 bucks. And we did the math. And we said, she's making 15 grand a month on a digital product. And it's all profit. So we bought the product. It wasn't very good. My wife learned how to make the jewelry. We videoed it. We photographed it. We created a tutorial. We started selling it. Make $1,000 in our first month, $2,000 a month, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $9,000 a month.
Wow.
We're like, we're going to get rich. This is amazing. This is crazy, right? It's all profit. And then it happened. Boom. The worldwide market for Scrabble tile jewelry crashed like overnight. The market became saturated. Everybody started selling it. So there was nobody left to buy the damn stuff. And so when nobody was buying it, nobody wanted to learn how to make it, and the market just collapsed. Now, so I learned firsthand how painful that can be, because at that point, our income dried up to nothing. We basically had run out of savings. My wife was in grad school, and we kind of had that moment where we looked at each other and said, all right, now what? Right? Quit my job, no other income coming in. So it was a painful lesson that I learned, and it led to the next market that I went into to be, it's an evergreen market. Now, what are some examples of markets that we've seen recently? Do you have any that come to mind, Kevin? Markets like this that they're huge and then fell off a cliff. I'll give you two, depending on which ones you come up with.
Well, I think like fidget spinners.
Boom. Fidget spinners, dude. Go to Google Trends, right? Go to Google Trends, trends.google.com, type in fidget spinners. What you're going to see, and you want to kind of search over the last 5 years to give yourself a long enough time horizon. You're going to see nothing, 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 nothing. Boom. It explodes to the sky and then falls off a cliff. I'll give you another one, right? That a lot of people that in my world, in my life, were impacted by in a huge way. Bitcoin.
Oh, yes.
There was a time where you could not turn the corner without hearing someone talk about Bitcoin. And everybody's starting everyone's investing in Bitcoin. Right. Everyone's starting their new Bitcoin newsletter, Bitcoin membership, starting this exchange. I'm going to start, I'm only taking Bitcoin, as form of payment.
Right.
Everybody's doing this. And if you look at Google Trends, you'll see the price, the keyword search volume, like people looking for what is Bitcoin and, how do I make money with Bitcoin? You see it explode and then fall off a cliff to next to nothing. So there are a lot of people who were enamored with this trending fad opportunity. And what I've learned, and I've seen it doing the research in our successful businesses, as well as the successful business of my clients, the secret is this. You want an evergreen market, a market that was relevant 10 years ago and will be relevant 10 years from now.
Yeah.
That's why you're so successful, Kevin. I mean, you've chosen a market, writing, human psychology, and how to motivate people through the written word that is never going to go away.
Yeah.
Right? It may not be Instagram forever. It may not be Facebook forever. It may not be Snapchat or whatever. But as long as human beings communicate with written words, your business is going to stand the test of time. Now, I learned this the hard way going into a fad market. So the next business I started was, and this story, was in the orchid care space.
Right.
Specifically went into that space because I wanted a hobby that I knew stood the test of time. And orchids have been a hobby for literally hundreds of years. You can see Renaissance paintings with people with orchids. Orchids have been around since the time of the dinosaurs. People have been caring for orchids for literally centuries. And chances are orchids is something that's not going to go away anytime soon. And so I was confident going into that market. And in fact, if you look at the Google Trends data on a keyword like orchid care, caring for orchids, you'll see that while the market is cyclical, it has a bit of a seasonal up and down. Like in the spring and summer months, it kind of spikes up. And then in the colder months, it drops down a bit.
Yeah.
But basically stable. Year after year, it doesn't change. That's what you want. You want a metronome market that is not going to disappear overnight, like fidget spinners, Bitcoin, or Scrabble tile jewelry.
Dude, I love that. Metronome market. I mean, we could do an episode just on that. And it's so cool to just go to Google Trends and type in these keywords. You'll see exactly what Ryan's talking about. Just look at orchid care, Bitcoin, fidget spinners, and you just think of anything. Oh, is this a fad or is this? And it's interesting because I always love the orchid care example just because you just wouldn't think of it, right? Especially in our world of online marketing and things like that. It's certainly not a common market. So coming full circle back to choose and how people can make these choices, what have you seen now when people, what are the eurekas people are getting from the book? Because there's a lot of, obviously there is a method to this and there's several sort of steps you want to go through. But what is the big eureka people get, Ryan, when they take a step back, re-choose, and then choose properly?
Yeah, so there's 7 tests in the book, and you're right, there is a process. And what I'm looking for now is there's a passage in the book where I actually share, someone documented her experience, 17 days going through this process. Her name is Anna. And I'm looking for that passage in the book where she documents her process of going through choose. And you can see her journey. So she says, here's my business. And she has a successful business. So this is someone who has a successful business, but her business wasn't taking off in the way that she wanted it to. It felt like she was paddling those 18 hours a day and she was against the current. And what she was looking for was how to find that current. Because when you find that market that is the right river, it's like having a current at your back that propels you forward. And if you've ever been rafting before, you know what that feeling's like, where you're just rowing and you're trying to go and you're just busting your butt, versus when the river's just propelling you forward, you get things going and it becomes a flywheel. Right? It's tough to get going, but once it's moving, it never stops. So, this is Anna talking about her experience. So this is one of the stories I share in the book. So she says, I teach entrepreneurs how to hire and manage their VA, virtual assistant. So that's the market that she went into. And then it starts with brainstorming your business model, right? followed by brainstorming what type of entrepreneur you are. And there are 4 types of entrepreneur that we've discovered that I talk about in the book. And we help you identify which type you are. Then identifying and testing what we call your bullseye keyword. And so she says, I did the market size sweet spot test, and I have only one of my bullseye keywords passed the Google and Amazon tests. One was read music, and one was train a virtual assistant. Elderly care tips, a market that she was thinking about going into. Train a virtual assistant and elderly care tips were so low they didn't register, so she had to give them a light. So the business that she was in, the thing that she thought was gonna, give her that freedom and impact and income that she wanted, was a red light market. So all of a sudden she's in this process and she's saying, now it makes sense. It's not me. It's not that I'm doing anything wrong. It's not that I'm not working hard enough. It's not that I'm missing the boat somewhere. I'm just in a market that is never going to be a slam dunk no matter what I do. So now it's just, epiphany time. She's now saying, okay, well, where do I go from here? So fast forward a bit, she starts looking at some other markets. And one of the markets that she was interested in was reading music. Another one was learn Chinese. Anna is married to a Chinese national, just 2 kids. They're American and Chinese. And she starts getting this idea that, maybe this is a market I might want to go into. And along the way, the coolest thing happened. She mentions this to her kids, especially to her older son, who's a teenager. And he says, hey, I'd love to do that with you, Mom. And now she brings her son, Michael, into the business with her. And now he's going through the process. Well, fast forward today, and I know how this story plays out. So Anna started in this business teaching people how to train and manage your virtual assistant, which was a red light market. She's slinging mud uphill. She's struggling. And here she is now today with a business where she teaches people Chinese. Her son is working in the business full time with her. And now not only have they built this financially successful business, but she found this opportunity that was never there. Her son got so excited that he wanted to jump in and do this with her. And now they're doing this thing that she just never envisioned just a few months before going through this process. So that's an example of the type of epiphany people are having and the type of results that people are having as a result.
It's great. So what I love is the internal and external. Internally, she had these desires. She was taking inventory of her own abilities, her own experience, right? One of the things she's passionate about, very capable of. I always say to people, what are you uniquely qualified to deliver to somebody? That very few other, because people are going to resonate with you and how you teach. It doesn't matter if it's been done before or better by other people. It does matter if it's been done and there's an established market, right? But don't get caught up in, well, who am I to teach this? There's masters who do this, right? No, you're going to find an audience because you're you. And as you're telling this story about Learn Chinese, I just typed it into Google Trends, and man, talk about a metronome market. I mean, the metronome is just perfectly across the board. As you say, peaks and valleys, ups and downs, but completely steady across the board. So she must have been really excited when she landed on that.
Absolutely. And, one of the models that I advocate for, and it's the model that you have incorporated into your business, is what we call selling education and expertise, right? So what I mean by that is, everything from digital courses to memberships like you have, to things like podcasts, to live events and boot camps and workshops, to coaching, consulting, masterminds, things like that. So I advocate for this model in a big way because of the low startup costs, because of the margins in this business. Unlike, selling a physical product, if you sell a table for $100, you might only make 10, 15 bucks on that table. But if you sell a course for $100 and it's a digital course, that's virtually all profit. And you can get a course off the ground really quickly. A table, I mean, you've got there are manufacturing lead times, there's inventory, there's, trips to Asia to prototype and import and export and all of the stuff you deal with. But whenever I bring this idea up of selling education and expertise, there's an objection some people have, which is, but I'm not an expert in anything. And for that type of person, what I would say is 2 things. Number one, you don't have to be the expert in your business. People always say, are you an orchid care expert, Ryan? Not really. I mean, I know enough. I know the difference between a phalaenopsis and a paphiopedilum and a oncidium versus a dendrobium. I know enough, but am I a world-class expert? Absolutely not. But what I've found is that people who do have expertise in that area, who write for us, who we put on our video courses, who teach. So you don't have to be the expert. That's number one. Second thing is this. Now, Kevin, I don't know a whole lot about orchids, but I would venture to guess that I know a little bit more about orchids than you.
Yeah.
And it underscores something that one of my mentors taught me. And it's this. He said, Ryan, remember this forever. To the fourth grader, the fifth grader is a genius. So you only need to be a few steps ahead of where your market is to be able to serve them in an incredibly deep way. And in some cases and in some ways, it's actually better to be the fifth grader than to be the PhD.
Mm-hmm.
If you're the PhD in that subject, you run the risk of being alienated from the beginner. You were a beginner so long ago that it can be challenging to relate back to someone in that situation. Versus if you're a learner teaching other learners, if you're someone who's just if you just walked that path, that was the mile that you just walked. You can teach someone how to walk that same mile because you've just been there. So if you feel like you don't have world-class expertise, I would challenge you and remind yourself that to the fourth grader, the fifth grader is a genius.
I love that. Ryan, this is so great. I want to make sure everybody gets the book. choosethebook.com/copychief is where you can get the book. I also welcome you for two reasons, to take the quiz, choosequiz.com, where you can see Ryan. First of all, what's great is you can take a quiz and find out what kind of business you should start, which is something we'd all love to know. But you'll also get to see Ryan eating his own cooking by putting Ask Method to work to market this book and whatever else he has planned for Choose. But just start with the pure idea of what you've learned on this call and helping you if you're have an entrepreneurial spirit, even if you're a freelancer. Let's discover the kind of business and the kind of markets that you're going to excel in using all the tools we've talked about today. Ryan, I want to respect your time. We're going to wrap up, but I'm going to ask you to read one more thing from the book, if you don't mind. It's the sixth stanza, I guess it would be, of the poem that you wrote. I love that you ended the book with this in the epilogue: to Henry and Bradley, your awesome kids. And this really struck me because my wife and I recently, there's one thing I always tell my kids who are 12 and 15 now. I said, if you take one lesson from me, it all comes down to a single word, and that word is momentum. If you always have momentum, it doesn't have to be in the right direction. In some direction, then a lot of good things will happen. The worst thing you can do is sit idle and wring your hands and say, I don't know. Okay. And so with that, I want to give context here. I hope you don't mind reading just one small part of a beautiful poem that you wrote to your boys about what it means to be an entrepreneur, if that is something they choose.
I'd love to. I wrote this book, and one of the things that I'm most proud of this book, I mean, when you write a book, you know what it's like, Kevin. You put your blood, sweat, and tears, your heart and soul into something. And I tried to strike the right balance between the head and heart. There's a lot of detailed analytical testing and processing that goes into this. But I like to take a step back to remind ourselves why we're doing this in the first place, right? I asked my publisher after the book was finished, I said, there's this letter I wrote to my two boys. It's something that I've actually never shared with anybody, but I think it's so important that I'd love to find a way to get it in the book. What do you think? And my editor read the letter, wrote back to me and said, we have to get this in the book. And so that's the epilogue. And so we are catching this in the middle of the letter, the stanza that Kevin mentions, but I'll read it here. Being an entrepreneur is all about one thing. In a word, it's about momentum. Momentum means moving forward, no matter how fast or how slow. Momentum means progress, not perfection, no matter how afraid you might be. Momentum means doing as well as you can in your business so you can do as much good as you can in the world, so you can give back, so you can make an impact, and not waiting for someday to get started with that, but starting right here, right now, today.
Whew, you give me chills, brother. I love it. This is why I love Ryan Levesque. It is a lot of head and a lot of heart. I've seen this man operate for years very closely, and you couldn't have a better guy in your corner to show you smarter ways to think about your business, to grow your business, and to care a whole lot about what you're doing and who you're doing it for. choosethebook.com/copychief and choosequiz.com. Ryan, thank you so much, brother. Can't wait to do it again.
Kevin, appreciate you, man. Super grateful and looking forward to chatting soon.
See ya. Copy Chief Radio. Copy Chief Radio.